Alright, you may have gotten this course just for this video, and quite frankly, I get excited when I think about topspin because I truly believe it's a great way to both control your shots and keep your opponent on the defense by moving the ball up and out of his or her strike zone. Not to mention having the ability to hit some really cool angles, right? And this is a pretty simple lesson because luckily there's only one way to simply and predictably create topspin on your shots, and that's going low to high. Now I realize you've heard that before, so let me explain just a little bit more. As we learned in a previous video, we always want to make contact at the 45-degree angle into the court, remember? So we know that because that's where you get the most power with the least effort. Well, think of creating topspin as the degree of how vertically the racket is traveling as you approach contact. Or in other words, how much low to high you're going with the racket as you approach the contact point. At an extreme level, if you wanted to create as much topspin as possible, you would actually try to stay behind the point of contact and just kind of go right up the back of that imaginary line on the 45. Chances are when you're in a baseline rally though, you're going to want depth and heavy topspin. Otherwise your opponent gets a short ball that just kind of sits there and you have to run for the hills. So you're going to have a little bit more horizontal action on the racket. In other words, the racket will be traveling a little more diagonally as you approach contact. So we're going to get into this in more depth when we talk about actually hitting with depth. Also, remember what we talked about in the power generator movies, because that's like your juice. The tighter your coil, the more relaxed you are, the cleaner your contact, the smoother your hip rotation, the more topspin you're going to be able to create because your backhand will be effortless and you'll have a ton of racket head speed. In other words, you're going to do everything else the same in terms of your coil, your contact point, your positioning, and if you decide you want more topspin, you're simply going to go a little more vertically with the racket or a little more low to high. So here's a couple of examples you can see in slow motion of really exaggerating this low to high motion with the racket. Now notice how as I approach the contact point, I'm consciously staying behind that contact point a little more and actually sliding up the back of that 45-degree angle. And a great way to feel this is simply take a ball and pin it against the net like this and line up your body and your hit on the 45-degree angle like this and practice sliding the ball over the net. This is essentially what you're doing when you want to create topspin. Now the next step would be stand in the service box, drop a ball to yourself, and see if you can spin the ball into the opposite service box like this. And eventually, as we'll see in the progression videos, take it back to the baseline. But for now, if you want more topspin, you want to go more low to high as you approach contact.